Shador Sanders is one of the best quarterbacks in college football, but Colorado needs a replacement for him for when he goes to the NFL draft, and Julian Lewis is the perfect person to do that.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Boulder. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. Visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn to get started. We are also brought to you by the Locked On Podcast Network. It's your team every day for free and available wherever you get your podcast. So thank you for making me your first listen of the day. We're talking about the contingency plan for life after Shador Sanders. It's something that we don't want to think about. We don't have to think about really now, but we kind of do. Because obviously he's NFL bound after next season. He wanted to go to the NFL, it seemed, after this year, but Coach Prime was like, no, you're running it back in Boulder for one more year. And there's kind of a big question looming around Colorado. There's two big questions. Who's going to replace Shador? And is Coach Prime going to stick around for life after Shador? Well, I think if they go all in on Julian Lewis, we get the answer to both those questions because obviously you get your quarterback of the future and you get your perfect replacement and kind of a reason for Coach Prime to stay bought into Colorado, as if just in case he wasn't already. But it was reported the other day that five-star Julian Lewis, he's from the 2026 class, reclassified to 2025. He reclassified to 2025. He's taken a visit to Colorado amongst Auburn. He's committed to USC right now, and he's also taking a trip to Georgia. Obviously, those are some heavy hitters, but Colorado has one thing that those other programs don't have right now, unless maybe Auburn, but they can't offer a clear path to the field. USC has a starter right now. Lincoln Riley's also been prone to take in transfers. Georgia has multiple guys that they could lean on. They have Carson Beck right now. They have Jalen Mayava, the UNLV transfer. They have Gunnar Stockton. They have a lot of guys in that quarterback room. Brian Puglisi, excuse me. That's a tough name for me to say. They have a lot of guys there. And so it's like Colorado. They don't really have a clear quarterback situation. So if he wants to come in, play right away, Colorado's a perfect place. A little bit about Julian Lewis. 6'1", 185. He's ranked as the number 9 player in the country according to 24/7 Sports composite rankings. He is a USC commit, has offers from nearly 40 programs. But after he decided to reclassify, he decided to explore some other programs, and this is where Colorado has a chance to strike. One, there's two main reasons, like I said, that Colorado needs to get him. They don't have a plan for life after Shador. They have Ryan Staub, who was kind of one of the leftover guys from the prior regime. He played in 3 games, played major snaps in 2 of them. One of them was Washington State, which clearly neither him or Gavin Cold were expecting to play because Shador Sanders went down. And then he started against Utah and did quite well, completed 70% of his passes, threw for nearly 200 yards and a touchdown. But them bringing in 2 additional quarterback transfers tells me that they are not confident that Ryan Staub is the guy after Shador, or they're just not confident that he will be there because obviously Coach Prime has kind of made it a point for guys to take advantage of the opportunity that they get and transfer on elsewhere if they think that's what they need to do. He kind of projected himself, this is Coach Prime, that Ryan would be leaving after the season because he wanted to start. And so clear as of right now, Ryan has stuck around. I think he knows he's not going to win the starting job over Shador in spring ball. So it's interesting to see what his future plans are. But they bring in Walter Taylor. They bring in Destin Wade from Kentucky and Walters from Vanderbilt. And it's like, okay, they added more depth. Is that a future plan, or is that just a kind of like a quick fix to have more guys competing for the QB2 spot? Now, I did a little digging on Walter Taylor. Destin Wade didn't play much. He played in a bowl game against Iowa in 2022 and didn't do much. Like he threw for 2 picks, flashed some things, but obviously not enough. He only played in the 1 career game. And then Walter Taylor had a tough fall camp. This is kind of the little spiel on him. It says Taylor has an elite frame, a cannon for an arm, and a legitimate threat on the ground, according to Mr. Weinstein out of 24/7 Sports. But he's very much an upside play, as decision-making is a big concern. He threw a lot of interceptions during fall camp, and his accuracy came and went. And so obviously when you're an offense like Colorado, who's throwing the ball around the yard, you do not want accuracy that's coming and going. You just don't. So then it's like, okay, he's a replacement for Shador. He could come in next year, compete with all these guys for the starting role. And it sounds like he would win the job. He's viewed as this is the sentence that stood out to me about him the most when I read his scouting report. Tailor made for a modern spread attack that wants to push the pace and constantly challenge defenses. Shador Sanders is constantly pushing the ball down the field. He's constantly making tough throws, and it seems like Julian Lewis could fit right in. He's a 5-star. He's built for the moment, reclassified, which always kind of worries me because we've seen a few of those guys succeed. We've also seen quite a few fail. JT Daniels, well, I wouldn't say failed, but he wasn't what we thought he'd be. JT Daniels is one of those guys. Quinn Ewers is the other side, is the flip side. So you're either getting Quinn Ewers or JT Daniels, and then on top of being the perfect replacement for Shador, someone who could come in, lead the offense, attract more talent to Colorado. Julian also could kind of show that Coach Prime is bought in to life after his two sons leave. I think that's the biggest question in college football right now, or one of the biggest questions in college football is what are Deion Sanders' plans for Colorado after his sons leave? We don't know. He doesn't know. Well, he says he's staying, but we don't know until we get there. Obviously, Colorado fans would hate for him to leave. The Boulder community would hate for him to leave. He's had such a great impact on Colorado, but there's rumors that, which the NFL thing is not going to be true, is not true, but there's rumors and beliefs that once his kids leave, he's done coaching, or the NFL could come calling, which he's not interested in the NFL. But maybe a job like Florida opens up, or a job like Miami. Is he going to turn those jobs down? He's a Florida guy, a Floridian at heart. He wants all of his players, not all of his players, but he wants a large chunk of his players to come from Florida. Is he still bought in to Colorado if he doesn't put in effort in this recruiting class? I think one of the biggest things we learned about Kalen DeBoer this past season over at Washington, and a lot of people said this after the fact, was if you look at his recruiting class, he was kind of recruiting like a coach that planned on leaving or maybe wasn't all in. Obviously, he's someone who definitely benefits from the transfer portal. Michael Penix came from the portal. A few of his key players came from the portal, Jabbar Muhammad. And that's one of those things like Coach Prime obviously depends on the portal, but if he doesn't put any recruiting effort in, is he really bought into the future of the program? I think by landing 5-star quarterback Julian Lewis, you get your quarterback of the future. You keep Coach Prime bought into Colorado, and it shows other recruits that he's bought in. And I think that's a huge question. I think that's going to be negative recruiting. We're going to talk about that next. The biggest negative thing you could say about Colorado right now is Coach Prime has no plans to be in Boulder for life after his sons leave. Obviously, a lot of people are like, his daughter's there. His daughter could transfer. It's one of those things where I think he would do what he has to do or what he feels is right. He wasn't shy about leaving Jackson State. He said he felt like Colorado was the best option for him. And who's to say that doesn't happen again? Now, I would hate for that to happen for Colorado fans. That'd be terrible. But I think by landing 5-star quarterback Julian Lewis, it shows Julian Lewis, he's bought in, and it shows other recruits like Winston Watkins, who at one point was committed, at one point was a 5-star, and then he backed off his pledge and said, you know what? I don't think he's going to be there next year by the time I get there. And I think this could kind of silence those doubters if he actually tries to build a legitimate class, because there's no question about whether Coach Prime can recruit or not. It's just a question of whether he wants to or not, because up to this point, he hasn't really shown outside of his first class. He brought in 6 players this past class, and obviously they were all really good. It's just, why didn't he bring in more? I know he has that method of so many transfers, so many recruits and guys coming back, but it would be really easy for him to put together a top 15 class. And I feel like if he doesn't do that again this year, there's going to be a lot more questions surrounding whether or not he's staying or going. And I think this would be a great way to combat those questions. This episode of Locked On Buffs is brought to you by our sponsors over at FanDuel. The NFL regular season is wrapping up, but there's still time to get in on the action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $150 in bonus bets, win or lose. The app is so easy to use. There's so many different ways to bet, like live same-game parlays. You can find bets in the new Explorers tab, or you can make a parlay in the Parlay Hub, which is the best way to find popular parlays around the FanDuel community. So visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a layup. FanDuel is the official partner of the NFL. Welcome back to Locked On Buffs. I appreciate you guys for tuning in, making me your first listen of the day. We're talking negative recruiting. It happens everywhere. It's a timeless tradition. I wrote about it over at Athlon, and it's just one of those things where everyone does it, but not everybody appreciates it. And Coach Prime is one of those people, and I thought he had a really interesting perspective on it. And I think this kind of shows because Coach Prime's the mix of modern day He's a mix of old school. Like he has that old school mentality where it's like you don't get number one if you're not a starter. You don't get number three if you don't earn it. And I like that about him. And then he's also willing to play the social media game, which is important because obviously in college football, there's kind of a precedent of like you need to have some clout. Players want guys or coaches, they want to play for them who play the social media game. And Coach Prime is someone who's willing to play the social media game. He's got a great presence. He's got well off media, his run by his son, who's just popping off all the time with great content from behind the scenes. And then he himself is very active. He has an Amazon doc, but it's also something that people use against him. They say he's that he's not going to be there after next season. But when he was on RG3's podcast, he had a really interesting quote about it. And I think a lot of people uh, were shocked by this because he not only had a quote about it, he took a stance on it. And I'm going to tell you what his quote is real quick. And then I'm going to tell you exactly why he kind of has to get over it because of all the things that are going to be said about him. College football coaches are going to the top, we'll say 10, 15 programs. A lot of these other programs, if Coach Prime put all of his effort into recruiting high school recruits, he would be unstoppable. And these coaches know that. So they kind of have to get that edge on him, but he kind of has to get over it. But here's what he had to say. I do not allow our coaching staff to ever comment on another school. You don't have to put another school down to put us up. I don't play that. He even said he would fire them. And then he said, recruits have come to him and said, and quote, now kids have recorded conversations with head coaches, not just assistants, head coaches doubting us and selling us out and just talking about us like a dog. I just politely call the head coach and say, look here, man, I don't really know you. I wish the best for you, but be careful because when these kids bring phones in your meetings, you're exposed to certain things. I'm not going to put you out there, but just keep my name out of your mouth. I've had to have that conversation. Now, I think that's great that he's confident enough and doesn't care about these guys, and he really could expose them. And I don't know what it would do to them, but I've seen the Coach Prime army of fans go after people before, so I can't imagine it would be pretty. But I think he just has to get over this. I think the best way for Coach Prime to silence these negative recruitings is he has to come out and say, one, I'm staying at Colorado. Two, I'm all in after my sons leave. I think he hasn't really done a good enough job of making it seem like he's all in on Colorado, even if his sons leave. Now, you may disagree with that, but there's a lot more questions about where he's going next than there are about Colorado's future with him as the head coach, because the automatic assumption is as soon as he wins a few games, say they win 7 games this year, the automatic assumption is he's going to be up for every major job. And so he needs to realize that other coaches are using this negative recruiting against him, one, to get a leg up on him because they know they can't keep up with kind of the notoriety and the energy that he brings unless they're like the top echelon of programs. But two, they know that some of these recruits have doubts. And so a lot of these coaches and recruiters, they build this trust with, say, this 5-star receiver, this 5-star quarterback, or 4-star, whatever it is. They build the trust and they say, I wouldn't lie to you. I know you're really considering Colorado, but from what I've heard, Coach Prime's not going to stick around. So the best way for Coach Prime to combat it, rather than kind of throwing out this like empty threat that he's going to expose them, which I know he wouldn't, because he doesn't seem like that guy, and he's had the chance to expose a lot of people and hasn't. I think he needs to just say the right thing, say what all the fans and what all of college football is waiting for him to say, and would be shocked by him saying. And he hasn't done that yet. And so until that happens, people are going to continue to say that he's not in there for the long haul. Now, obviously, there's a lot of other negative things to recruit about, like they only care about clicks and stuff like that. But that's not the case. That's him playing the game. That's him playing what this new college football world is. Because believe it or not, right now it's like 18 to 27-year-olds with all these guys that are staying for 7th years. But 18 to 23-ish year olds, they care about social media. They care about clout. They care about social media presence. And Coach Prime plays all that stuff really well. So people could come at him for that, and it doesn't really matter. But it's more of the other stuff that they're worried about. And it's like will he stay? Will he go? He's not going to be there forever. And I think he could silence those doubters easily. He just hasn't done that yet, which I feel like that's obviously totally up to him. But if he doesn't want to keep getting asked about it, that'd be a great way to kind of eliminate that question, I would say. But hey, it's Coach Prime's prerogative, so we'll just have to wait and see what he does. I just want to thank you guys again for making Locked On Buffs your first listen of the day. We're free and available wherever you get your podcast. We're talking about Pat Shurmur again because a lot of people are upset or a lot of people are distraught about the hire. They wanted the sexy hire. They wanted the Joe Brady, the Chip Kelly, if he was obviously fired, and they wanted the big names. And they got Pat Shurmur. And I'm here to tell you, Pat Shurmur is the perfect hire for Colorado, the perfect promotion, if you will, because there's two main reasons. And I talked about them before, and I'm going to talk about again. But there's also someone who backed me up in this, and it's NFL quarterback Case Keenum. And so, first two reasons that obviously Pat Shurmur is the best hire for Colorado. Continuity. He knows Shedeur Sanders. He knows the offensive weapons. He knows what Dylan Edwards is good at. He knows, what routes Xavier Weaver. He would know what routes Xavier Weaver excels at. He knows what Jimmy Horn likes. He knows what Travis Hunter likes. He knows what looks to give this offense to put them in the best cases to succeed. And then also, he gives this program the perfect, the perfect blend of he's bought into the program, but he also knows what the task at hand is. I think too oftentimes in college football, and especially this past season, we saw it. Coach Prime made a great hire by hiring Sean Lewis, but Sean Lewis, as much as he was bought into Colorado, he was also bought into getting himself a new head coaching job. And that's nothing against him. That's kind of what the goal was. Coach Prime said it himself. I think Sean Lewis would say the same thing, that he got this Colorado job to propel his career. Pat Shurmur is someone who's close with Coach Prime. I don't know if Pat Shurmur, one, if he wants to get back in the head coaching, and two, I don't know if I'm going to say he wouldn't get another shot, but he's up there in age. Would he be getting another head coaching shot? Who knows? But this is a multi-year hire. It shows stability. And Colorado has kind of bordered like everything's good for now. And what is going to happen in 12 months' time? It goes back to Coach Prime, kind of his future in Colorado being questioned. Like, what is going to happen after the 2024 season? Is everyone still going to be around? I think Pat Shurmur now gives the chance to kind of build the offense his way. I think, obviously, I was critical of him down the stretch because I think there was a lot of questionable play calling. I think there was a lot of questionable time management stuff on offense that could have been avoided. As someone who's a former head coach, should not have happened. But I will give him the benefit of the doubt in the sense that he had the tall task of coming into the season. It was like I think there's like 4 weeks left. So like week 10 or week 9-ish, where it was like he comes into the season. He has to call plays from Sean Lewis's playbook and call them in a manner that, one, pleases himself, and two, pleases the coaching staff, and then three, gets results. And so when you're using someone else's playbook, it's really weird because it's not a seamless. Like, obviously he's been working with the offense all year, but now it's in his hands. And so obviously, in the back of his head, every time something would happen, he'd probably be like, I wouldn't do that. And so Pat Shurmur, he brings that experience, he brings that knowledge, and now they get a whole offseason to operate things his way, which I think could help this offense take another step. I think realistically, having a run game would help this offense a ton. I think the new offensive line will help them a ton. Now, obviously, that's not really Sean Lewis's fault that they had the worst offensive line in college football, but he also didn't put in a huge amount of effort, I would say, into kind of figuring out ways to work around them. And so that's where Pat Shurmur comes into play. And so Case Keenum said that Shedeur Sanders working with Coach Shurmur would be a priceless experiment for him. Experience. Excuse me, how to get that third segment sipping. Throat was getting a little raspy, but he said it'd be a priceless experience. Excuse me. Case Keenum had his best season when he was playing for Shurmur. It is what it is. Like, I think a lot of people want to criticize Pat Shurmur. A lot of people want to criticize Case Keenum, but the numbers are there. The results are there. I don't know if Shedeur Sanders is going to have his best season yet, but I do think he's going to take another huge step. I think he kind of showed college football that he wasn't just the son of Deion Sanders. He's actually one of the best quarterbacks in college football. And having another coordinator, the same coordinator, kind of, same half coordinator, because he had him for the last few games, this would be the first time in his college career. He's had different play callers seemingly every season, and having this continuity could only help him. He's had to learn a new offense every offseason. Now, obviously, he's going to have to learn somewhat a new offense because Sean Lewis isn't there, but he already knows Pat Shurmur well. They know each other. They probably could keep the same verbiage if they want. They probably could keep certain things the same way. And so Pat Shurmur, while he wasn't the biggest hire by any means of the college football cycle. Hello, Nick Saban retired. But he's someone who Colorado, they knew what they were doing. I think sometimes playing it safe isn't always a bad thing. Sometimes when you go to the casino and you win the first 2 hands of blackjack and you're up, say, a few thousand, sometimes it's okay to walk away. You don't have to keep pushing your luck. Does I think by hiring Coach Shurmur, Coach Prime wanted some consistency. I think he knew there was a risk of kind of going out there and seeing if he could find another splashy young hire and then having to do the process over again the following year. Pat Shurmur is probably sticking around. He's got a close relationship with Coach Prime. Probably will have some better communication, and they might see eye to eye. I think the hard part last season too was Julain Lewis, former head coach, Coach Prime, current head coach, other guys, head coaches all around. And I think when there's that many head coaches in the room, opinions may differ. Opinions may be a little dicey. Someone may want to do things this way. Someone may pull this card. Someone may pull that card. Like, oh, this is my team. Oh, but this is my offense, kind of thing. With Pat Shurmur, I feel like he knows what his role is. He knows what this offense can do. So I think he's the perfect hire. And if Case Keenum's backing him and saying he's the perfect coach or play caller for Shador, you have to trust someone who's played for Shurmur. I think a lot of people who don't really know Shurmur from the outside kind of view him as like the ugh. But if a former player is going out of his way to kind of talk highly of him, you have to at least give it a chance. And if it doesn't work out, Coach Prime will not hesitate to make a move. So either way, this offense is going to do well. They're improved on the offense line. They got more wide receiver weapons. They have a good running attack, which I think they could bolster even more. But hey, this Colorado team could make some noise next season. And I think Pat Shurmur will be one of the main reasons why. I appreciate you guys for tuning in to Locked On Buffs every single day, making me your first listen of the day. I will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day.